Hello, my name is James. I'm from Team 9039H, and I'm just going to do a quick robot explanation on our early season robot. We started building this around June, and since then we've gotten some people asking if we could do an explanation on how some parts work, so we thought we'd just do an explanation on the whole robot. I'll start with Drivetrain. We've run this drivetrain for about 2 years, so it's 6 motors and 6 wheels, all Omni wheels, and it goes from 36 to 48 tooth gear, so it's about 450 RPM. We've really liked this drivetrain the past 2 years with its speed, and it's also got a good amount of strength. And so we just kind of kept it for this season, or at least the early season. On the top, we have about the first third of the robot is a snail. So the block can come through the front, we intake it through the front, and then it goes up the robot, and we can either make it go back down and outtake onto the low goal in the center, or we can intake it through here in the middle and it'll score on the center goal, or we can make it outtake up to here, which will score on the high goals. We've seen really good success with the high goal and mid goal scoring. It's been very efficient. The main trouble we've kind of just had is the hopper, and so I'll go into that. The back hopper, it makes up about 2/3 of the robot, and it can hold about 15 balls. We decided we use mesh to encase the whole thing, which worked really well. Although on the bottom, we use mesh and it's just a little too sticky, so sometimes it gets stuck. But we've done a bunch of things to try and avoid that. So I'll go more into the intake part of it now. So we use 3 motors, 2 5.5 watt motors and a 11.1 watt motor. The 11 watt motor is 600 RPM, and it connects to this axle, which is kind of hidden in between these 2 pieces of mesh, so it's kind of protected. We never really had any trouble with that, any bending or anything, so we worked pretty well. And the reason we had it back there and not on this roller is because we wanted this roller to run at 300 RPM. We found that this roller running at 300 RPM just helped improve the consistency of the middle goal scoring. And then finally we go down to the bottom roller, which is geared up to 600 RPM from the middle roller, and we just found that the intake works better when it's faster, so the 600 on the bottom just kind of helped. And then I'll go up to this top roller, which is on a 5.5 watt 200 RPM motor. So this roller actually runs on, motor. This roller runs at 200 RPM, and it is a little slow, but it does score, and that's kind of why we're going away from this design, just because of slow scoring. But then the top roller is geared up to 600, and how we do that is we have a 36 tooth gear geared to a 12 tooth gear, and then on that 12 tooth gear, it's a sprocket which goes up to this sprocket using chain and runs out at 600 RPM. It makes the scoring really fast and works really well. Finally, I go to the third motor, which is the indexer, and that's on the bottom, and that's kind of what pulls the blocks from inside the hopper into the rest of the intake system, or through the bottom out to the bottom goal. Some people have questions about how this intake worked without this moving at all, and we actually designed it so that this roller, we wouldn't have to run it as blocks were coming up. So I'll kind of demonstrate that. If I put a block in front, I can hit this top button and the block will come up and it'll be scored in, and you can see the blue block is still in there. And then if we want to score, another thing people have questions about was this top ramp thing. So instead of scoring through the bottom, because we found that the intake would sometimes struggle because it's only a 5.5 watt motor, it would sometimes struggle when there was a lot of blocks in the system, so we decided to go through the top. This can actually switch directions using the 25mm piston right there. So when we hit the top button, the top intake button, it'll automatically switch, and both blocks will be scored through the top. And basically how we made this as simplistic as possible is we connected the piston to the intake buttons. So if I were to hit this bottom right trigger, it switches it and also runs the intake at the same time. And then if we want to go back to the top goal scoring, then we can hit that and it'll score. I'll kind of dive into how we avoided our jamming and kind of like stopped the blocks from jamming too much. So the bottom mesh was the main problem, but we didn't really want to change that before rebuilding our robot. But what really helped is having these two funnels right here. The two funnels, they're plexiglass, and we just kind of put black tape over them to make them look a little better. They help funnel one block in the middle, and if two were right next to each other, yeah, so if they were like perfectly next to each other like this, we'd be able to easily just hit the button and it would move one out of the way and push the other one. It worked really well. We just kind of had this mesh would just kind of get a little too grippy, so you should definitely like use plastic or something down there. Another question people kind of had with our intake was what those two flex wheels in the middle were for. So we decided early on that we wanted the intake to be able to go pretty vertical, so that harsh change of angle, we used ramps, but they didn't really make it smoother, so we put flex wheels in the middle, and those really helped kind of with the steepness of the angle, helped smoothen it out. So I'll put it all through the system. So when the intake runs, it kind of helps the block smoothly go over. Another thing I can go over is this, but pretty much everyone has it. We just had the two standoffs. We didn't really tune it much, but we did get it to work. We're probably gonna work more on it with our next robot. Brain's on the back. We just have it screwed on here, our reports, and then the tanks back here. I mean, I guess that's kind of it about our robot. If you have any questions, leave them down below. Thank you for watching.